Hi, this is Lorraine Watry, and this is part 4 of Watercolor Techniques for Beginners. And this is actually a repeat or a remake of the videos I made earlier, and I hope they are new and improved and easier to follow along. So when we ended last time, we stopped at the opaque versus transparent section, and we just had some sections, techniques that we needed to go back and finish up. We had put some color on a few places earlier on, and they needed a second coat or something else to add to them. So to start with, I'm going to go over to the masking section, and I'm using a rubber mask pickup tool there, and I'm just pulling off the liquid mask that I had put on earlier. And actually, I didn't even think about it, but I should have tested that area with my hand to see if it was dry before I lifted the masking. And so I kind of smeared the watercolor in just a few places because it wasn't quite dry. So then once you have that masking off, you can take a scrubber brush and go back and soften edges. That's what that is right there. It has a little bit of a harder bristle. It's actually a fabric brush that I picked up at the art store. And so you dampen it and then you can use that to soften edges. Or you can go back and put color in those areas that you pulled the masking off of, and I just pulled the masking tape off of the other section there. And so you can see how the areas of the watercolor paper were saved by putting masking fluid or masking tape over them. Now you don't have to use masking fluid or tape. You can just go around your whites, and a lot of times that will leave you with a fresher feel to the white areas, but then there are times, depending on what you're painting, that you may need the benefit of having those areas masked off. Okay, so I'm moving back up the page here a little bit. And I still have negative painting and the lift out or feather out area, and also glazing to do something with. So right there I am using a brush that is wet, and even though the paint is dry, I can come back and lift color out. So there I'm using a scrubber brush, and it can lift stronger amounts of color out just because it's got a harder bristle. And it depends on your paint whether or not it will lift a lot or a little. If it's a very staining paint like phthalo blue, it won't lift as much. If it's not as staining a paint like cobalt, which this color that I'm using in that section is cobalt, it lifts easier. And then also what I'm doing with the scrubber brush there is I am doing the feather out technique, where if you have a hard edge and you want it to be a softer edge, you can come in with a little bit of a damp brush or a damp scrubber brush on the edge of that hard-edged area, and you can soften it by feathering it out with water. Now I'm mixing some darker color because in the negative painting area, I want the darker color to go around that lighter color, and I'm going to use that darker color to sort of define and reshape the lighter color. So I'm just sort of imagining a bush and maybe a darker tree behind it. And if I had more room there, I could actually make a tree shape and do a little bit more in that area. And then I can show you that it doesn't have to be foliage. You can use negative painting for a lot of different things. So I went and pulled up the same dark color and actually made my initial. So you can just paint, and that is called negative painting, where you are making the lighter paint pop out by putting some darker paint around it. Okay, and we have one more section to do something on, and that is the glazing section. And earlier I painted that yellow on there, and now I'm touching it to show you that you can test it to see if that paint is dry by touching it, and if it feels cool to the touch, it's still not dry, but it was dry. And so I took some cobalt and painted over the top of that, and you can see where those two colors cross. They actually create a new color, and that is another way of mixing colors, and that is an optical mix. So you put one color on the top of another color. So where that color overlaps, it creates a green, and then where the colors don't overlap, it's their pure color. Now you don't have to glaze another color over the top. I could have just taken the same yellow, which I'll show you here, and by putting that yellow again over itself, you're creating a darker area. It gives it a little more intensity and a little more body to that area. So that's a way that you can add and adjust your painting, is by glazing. So I hope you've enjoyed these videos, and I hope that these techniques will help you in your watercolor endeavors, and strongly encourage practicing, especially the solid wash and graded wash, and get used to some of those techniques. And as you can see, we finished up, and I thank you for following along and liking my videos. Please look back for any future videos that I may put on here, and enjoy painting. Thanks. Bye.